Good evening. Today is Monday, March 29th. S&P 500 tested 3930 level a few times today. This was the level that S&P 500 broke out from on Friday in that late last minute rally. And we traded between this level and the Friday's high pretty much for the most of the day. And we have closed down a few points. We are very few points away from the all-time highs as well. Russell was down more than 2.5% today, totally erasing all the gains from Friday. And bonds were down as well. There were lots of woke news today. Just some highlights. Biden is going to introduce a $3 trillion infrastructure plan this week, which includes lots of familiar global warming and other social justice issues. And in the health news, the COVID fear-mongering continues. Biden says that all the states should reinstate mask mandates and wait till they reopen the businesses. My guess is he's just trying to take away the news cycle from all the border crisis that has been going on and kids in cages. Instead, they want our kids to be in masks. As Dr. Fauci declared Sunday that all the kids need to be vaccinated or must wear face masks if they want to play together. I think it's just child abuse at this point. And on top of this morning, the CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, warned the public and pretty much cried on TV that we have, and I quote, impending doom coming with the fourth wave because of some small rise in COVID cases and hospitalizations. And New York City is introducing a vaccine passport, which would allow its citizens to get admission to certain places, which is interesting because some people can't get an ID to vote. So how would they get a vaccine passport? It's a little confusing to me. But thankfully, our Florida governor said that he will issue an executive order to ban any such vaccine passports. Bitcoin is trading around 58,000, a few thousand up from Friday. And the CEO of MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, said a few days ago that he believes the price of Bitcoin could surge to 5 million per coin. His company is, of course, the largest holder of Bitcoin in the corporate world, while his stock is trading down 50% over last month or so. So I guess he just tries to beat up his company's value. Victor, what other woke news have you noticed?
Well, Governor Cuomo has a ninth accuser with pictures. And if it was someone who was not progressive, he'd be in jail and be sued by 9 separate high-powered lawyers. I noticed that the odds that the Democrats will win the election are at the presidency in 2024 at an all-time high of 55% versus 42%. So that's very progressive, very good for the market. And Vice President Harris is still 4 out of 7 to be the president in 2024 compared to Biden. Dr. Fauci over the weekend took credit for the lack of explosion in the pandemic. He felt that his advice held everything down. There were some good riots in Seattle and Salem. and the police were very restrained, didn't interfere at all, and the military is becoming as progressive as the CDC. They're having a lot of mandates for women to join the military at a lower physical level. I guess some people are actually interested in the markets. The market is flirting with an all-time high. The all-time high is just a half a point above here at 65, 3965.5. We closed at 3964. So twice in a row, it set an intraday high, but closed a little bit below. It's the way Elmer Kelton describes his the girlfriend Dolly of his son. She's always, in the old days, I guess this was common. She pretends that she's going to be available for something very romantic, then she backs away, but she lets you think that in a little while it will come. And then eventually the son, Charlie's son, can't stand it anymore, and he agrees to marry her. They spend a night or two together and in a romantic vein, and then he brings her home, and she watches television all day, a broken television. She's not really a ranch person. She didn't sign up for taking care of a depleted cattle ranch. But anyway, the market is like that. It keeps pretending that it's going to close have one more all-time high. It hasn't set an all-time high in 10 days. That's an amazingly long streak. I thought it might be useful to think about where the markets have been at the beginning of the year versus now. The S&P is up about 6%, started around 37. This is all the year-end prices. Started 37.40, now it's 39.40, so it's a good 200 points up. DAX has gone up 140 on a 13,400 base. That's about 9%. Nasdaq was basically 12,900, and now it's 12,940. Nasdaq is basically unchanged. It's up about 1%. You would think that the Triple E, which has everything in their political favor, they control all the news, and they're in a la mode with the current administration, and they're helped by all the lockdowns and with everybody wearing masks and having to do their stuff online, and their earnings are going through the roof with all the off business activities. So you think they'd be doing very well, and growth is always has beaten value for about 12 years in a row. Tremendous difference, but of course the bonds are down 20 big points. They're down more than 10. The long-term bond is down about 12% on the year. And they say that if you discount the value of growth, the higher the interest rates are, the less the value of growth versus value becomes. Like if interest rates go from 5 to 10%, then the value of a growth stock decreases by 50%. So that's a partial explanation, but I don't know if it's as important as the fact that Nasdaq has the weather gauge. Their earnings of sales are going through the roof. I thought it was very significant, very progressive, probably the most progressive thing of all, now that the big pharma is being berated for making a profit. And Elizabeth Warren came after all these companies that are making profits out of everybody's difficult. I mean, doesn't anyone realize that it's the $500 billion that these companies have spent on research and building up their infrastructure and developing their expertise that was enabled them to create the vaccine? They had the vaccine in January 2nd, 2020. But needless to say, and talk about shooting yourself in the foot. The pharma companies all held back the news that they had the vaccine until after the election. You would think that they would object to the fact that they'd be tarred for being so successful and having finally all their research efforts creating tremendous well-being. But no, they were part of the problem. They shot themselves in the foot.
Well, maybe they know it's all talk and there will be no action. So
what? There's a lot of action. The Democrats want to. There's all over the world. The countries, you know, a bully is always a coward, but they sense that they sense an opening, you know, and so they're all demanding that the patents that the big pharma has be abolished. They give all the countries be able to produce the goods, produce the vaccines without paying a royalty. No, and Elizabeth Warren was extremely strident against Amazon, it's not enough that they're abolishing all the right to work rules, but she's upset that she's upset that with their profits, and also that they haven't unionized everywhere, and also that they're defending themselves. You would apparently Amazon has someone in their headquarters who's like their token non-progressive person, and he came back and he said, look, we've paid 10 billion in sales tax, we paid 2 billion in federal taxes, and our minimum, we created 500,000 jobs, and our minimum wage is 25% higher than anywhere else. So they fought back a little bit. You know, that Bezos must have been involved in some progressive activities, and he probably didn't know that they actually are proud of the fact of what they've done, and sure enough, Elizabeth Warren then berated them for coming back with an answer to her diatribe. So I believe that the anti-business thing is anti-capitalism. Progressivism was at a maximum today. That's why the market was only a half a point from the high, and like Dolly, it will eventually succumb to the new high. The euro, the dollar against the euro is only down 2%. You know, everybody talks about how it's almost impossible to make money in the foreign exchange. And I learned that. I used to be a big foreign exchange trader, but then I realized that the banks always report something like $200 billion a year in profits from their foreign exchange trading. So how are what's left for little me? Once I did, I helped the Palindrome. It's the only time I've helped them with a long-term position, except I've reduced his tendency to be bearishness. But the reason that they had the 1987 crash was Baker said that unless the Germans improve their increase their rate against the dollar, unless they became stronger, that he was going to take action against them, and then the market went down 25% on that one little action. That's why those people in the know always say that Baker did it when they're talking about the 19. Anyway, once on a weekend, the Palindrome called me up and he said, "What's going to happen to the dollar?" I said, "The dollar is going to be extremely strong because when it was weak, it caused the crash." And he said, "Oh, Because, yeah, that seems to strike a chord with him. And he immediately reversed a many billion-dollar position, became long the dollar. But all the contests show that the best foreign exchange trader maybe can make 15% in a year. And Larry's very progressive and extremely mobile and successful daughter, who's almost as famous as him. She was able to make 1,000% when he taught her how to trade, and Larry made 10,000% by trading stocks. So there's a lot more opportunity in the stock market than there is in foreign exchange. Anyway, the foreign exchange, great. Everybody's talking about how the dollar has been killed. Well, yeah, it's down 2% this year. By the way, New York Times had a great article. It even had an illustration. In the old days, they used to have real illustrators. Now they can do everything with computers. Anyway, the article is "The House Always Wins." And they describe Bet 365. Their executive, whose picture is right here, she was the highest earning Denise Coates. She earned more than $1 billion last year. And the firm made several $billion, had its most profitable year ever. Very good article. But the thing, and what I like about it is that they have something in ecology called a polymorphism, where in two separate environments, this two species develop the same kind of adaptation to survive, even though they're not genetically related. And the Bet 365 has the, if you're making money by betting, they limit you to bets of $2,000 or $3,000 total. But if you're losing money, then they put you in touch with an extremely helpful mentor. So here's the polymorphism. That's exactly what happened to Robinhood. A lot of my friends wanted to buy GameStop when it was 100 and 150. They could buy one share. Robinhood let them buy one share. Why? Of course, the reason is the house always wins. I also like the fact that Bet 365 and all the other big firms that are making as much money as they do, they say, well, why should we have to wait for a person makes his bet a week before the big game or a day before, and then finally at the end of the day we know he's won. Why not have betting every minute? So they have in-game betting, like how many field goals will be hit in the next quarter, who will make the next touchdown, will it be the home team or the visitors. So we'll see a polymorphism. In fact, the stock market will eventually be having in stock market betting. Right now, you know, there's buy and hold. A lot of people, as Larry said, it's a magic machine. You can make a fortune, and if you just buy and hold. But they have to change that because the house always wins, and there has to be in-person betting on the stock market. I believe that you can do that in England. And then the worst thing of all, an article by Catherine Munger Ward. She's the editor-in-chief of Reason. And this is unbelievable. The article is Abolish the FDA, and she talks about 10 things that the FDA did to prevent the vaccine from being rolled out promptly. You know, usually it takes 10 years, and it's amazing, you know, that they were able to do it in 4 or 5 months. But she points out that, and she has 10 different things that they did to delay. The most amazing thing, as I said, is January 2nd, 2020, Moderna had the vaccine. Then a lot of the companies tried to create a test. You know, this 5%. Do you have the disease or not? The CDC prevented any companies from offering the test themselves. They wanted to use their own in-house test. Then there were delays in the meetings, the days off that were taken. It goes on and on. It makes you cry to think of all the human lives that were caused by the bureaucracy in the FDA. So now we have everybody should wear masks. You know. Anyway, it's a great progressive day, and it's flirting with the all-time highs, and like Dolly, it will succumb. Will succumb to the all-time highs. I don't know when it will prevent it. What it only had a 40-point range today. It wasn't from 39.70 to 39.30, so there wasn't that much opportunity for the poor public to be margined out. 4,000 S&P is in the sights, and it's been faking around and fooling around, you know, sort of foreplay in the 3,900 area for about a month now.
But longer term, I wanted to ask you
about, okay, you ask me
about the sentiment, because it seems that the sentiment is excessively bullish, starting with 51%.
Okay, have you tested that? Have you tested that? The only thing that's significant about that is when the percentage bullish is very low, that's
Right.
very bullish. That's very good for the market. But when the percentage is high,
Right.
that's not bearish.
But by itself, maybe, but the confluence of events, for example, the bullishness in penny stocks, the volume increase is huge. The median OTC stock trades 300% above its 52-week low.
Well, I think we can go back to our original mantra that the purpose of the market, and one of the purposes, is to take money from the weak and give it to the strong. All those people, on average, will lose, and they're paying tremendous vig. The gambling, the bet 365 take 2.5%. They take 2.5% on the VIG, and the VIG is so much higher than that in the stock market. And all these gambling companies are, up 100 or 200% as the small players rush into gambling, and they have special hospitals now for people who are are likely to commit suicide from excessive gambling.
Well,
it's
it
funny,
seems like
when I used to go, I once took my mentor Irving Riddell and Jamie Melcher to Las Vegas, and I told them that I had to hide when I went there because Gambling Anonymous was going to try to put a straitjacket on me and rake me in. So there's a tendency to gamble in everybody, and I relate that to Dostoevsky's novel *The Hand*, in which he attributes the urge to gamble and to lose money to feelings of guilt concerning their feeling, the Oedipal complex. I think there's a lot to that.
interesting.
A lot to that anyway.
Well, but there are many other indicators. So, like,
yes, that's right. All right, that's why, as Larry said, and by the way, I think it was a terrific interview. There was so much wisdom and so much culture and soul. Larry gave a very soulful interview, and people asked us how come we didn't go back and forth with him on all of his indicators. What he gave us was infinitely more valuable. If you listen to what he said, if everybody listened to what he said, the bet 65s of the stock market would do a lot worse. They should have a director of handicapping for the handicapper general that Harrison Bergeron had should come out and suppress Larry, because he provides so much fresh air. He's like he took off the mask, and he urged everybody to take off their mask. And if everybody were to stop gambling and they were to listen to Larry, the world would be a lot better place. But that's what I was saying. There's always something. It's always the deficit. It's always the bonds. It's always the.
Well, it's just so much. We have the NFTs, the SPACs, the bull versus bear, the inflow.
Honey, it's always that way. There's always something. Yeah. Look at what Mr. Ellison talks about. Every year there's always a horrible calamity looking us in the face. That's why the market goes up.
Well, every year, consequently, there's also a 10 to 20% pullback.
No, not every year there's a 10 to 20%. It's about every 7 or 10 years. And the pullbacks come because of margin calls by the brokerage houses. But when the market goes down, no, for every 10% decline that the market has, there's a 20% rise. How does it go up 50,000-fold a century? It doesn't go down 10% a year. It went all from 19.
No, I meant correction, not down for the year, but intra-year.
It went from 1990 to 1997 without a 10% decline. About one correction. But in any case, it seems that way. It seems like the market's always gone down 10%, and that the bullishness is always too high, and the public is making too much money. No, the one bad thing is that the progressives keep spending money, and they reduce the public to an abject state where they look to the government for everything, and they set up a state of mind where instead of looking to the individual, to the great corporations to provide the prettiest consumer with the best products, the best prices. Now they're looking to the government. But on the surface, you would think that the term, all the anti-capitalist sentiment going through the world, and the increasing chances that the progressives will win the next, the 2024 election. You'd think that might be somewhat bearish, but no. As we know, the more progressive it is, the better it is. Okay, do you want to have one great Tom Wislow's Proverbs? And we have another proverb from Francis Galton, who is, I wrote I don't like to say this because the algorithm, like they hold him like Beethoven as responsible for the entire Holocaust, but actually he's made the greatest contribution to so many fields, including statistics, weather maps, and fingerprints, and geography, and anyway, he was talking about the tendency of people to take straw out of the hat, grab at one thing and make it consistent with their views, like all the bears always have one reason or another. I once had a spec party, and someone came up to me and said, you asked me not to come. I said, what do you mean I asked you not to come? Everybody's here. And he said, yeah, I'm the barometer. I have the major bear bear blog. Anyway, so this is what Francis Galton said, and it was quoted by Steve Stigler. He says, exercising the right of occasional suppression and slight modification. In other words, when you think about some of these reasons for being bearish, there's always a little, there's always something a little different from what happened. The record's always, like we were talking about the fact that about 100 points ago, people were saying, well, the market is never, the market's up 50% from its 1-year low, and and that's very rare. But they don't bother to look back, So anyway, exercising the thought of occasional and slight modification with the facts, it is only absurd. It's truly absurd. It's absurd to see how elastic a limited number of observations, like everything that the bears say, become in the hands of men with preconceived ideas. People should tack that up on their wall. Okay, well, sorry I didn't have anything much to say today. I try to have something more interesting next time. Thank you very much for inspiring me.
Thank you, Victor. Have a good night.